All right, guys. So Donald Trump just made a pretty massive mistake by coming out in this interview with CNBC, which is one of the most ghoulish corporate networks in the country, and basically floated the idea of being in favor of cuts to Social Security and other social programs like Medicare and Medicaid. So we're going to watch this. I'm going to give you some recent updates on it. And then we're going to get to this Ben Shapiro clip with him basically saying that everybody should work until they drop dead. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the Trump part here.
I think that at least the perception is that there's not a whole lot of difference between what you think we should do with entitlements or non-discretionary spending and what President Biden is proposing. It's almost a third rail of politics. And we've got a 33, 34 trillion dollar total debt built up, and very little we can do in terms of cutting spending. Discretionary is not going to help. Have you changed your outlook on how to handle entitlements, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, Mr. President? It seems like something has to be done, or else we're going to be stuck at 120% of debt to GDP forever.
So first of all, there is a lot you can do in terms of entitlements, in terms of cutting, and in terms of also the theft and the bad management of entitlements, tremendous bad management of entitlements. There's tremendous amounts of things and numbers of things you can do. So I don't, necessarily agree with the statement.
Okay, so a couple of things there, right? First off, when he calls them entitlements, and this is a phrase that many Republicans use and some Democrats as well, they're called entitlements because the American people should be entitled to them. I mean, we're talking about programs that the American people, in the case of like Social Security, they pay their entire lives into that program. Okay, working their whole lives to pay into Social Security on the assumption that when they get to that age, they're going to be able to retire and have some modicum semblance of stability, right? So it's an entitlement, but it's a deserved entitlement. It's not some like piece of candy. You're not giving out a candy dividend to old people once they feel like they're done working or something, right? So that's number one. Before we continue with the Trump stuff, though, I do have to mention that this host on CNBC is absolutely amazing. Number one, because he focuses on, the debt is so explosively large, what are we going to possibly do about it? And then he says, but there's not really any options in terms of cuts to programs outside of maybe some of these programs like Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Not even considering the possibility that if you care about cutting the debt and the deficit, maybe you could, tax wealthy asshats like you. Number one. Maybe number two, you could chip away at the $1 trillion that we spend on the military every single year, 900 military bases overseas, how many countless, endless wars that we've been a part of that have cost us trillions and trillions of dollars. The Pentagon failed 5 audits in a row. I mean, like, they don't even consider the possibility of taxing the wealthy or large corporations, or, chipping into the most corrupt and bloated budget that we have, which is the military budget. They don't even consider that. Just brush that aside. Now, I also think it's important to mention, this view of modern monetary theory, which in large part I agree with, which is basically that the federal debt and the deficit should not be considered these big bad, boogeymen within society. Okay, there is a way to deficit spend. There is a way to maintain certain levels of debt that are totally fine. The federal government is never going to go bankrupt. It's not possible. They are the producers of the currency. Okay, the real question that we should be having when it comes to deficit spending or the national debt is, what are we spending the money on? If we're spending the money on endless wars and a bloated military budget to enrich defense contractors, and we're exploding the deficit to give tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires and corporations as a form of like trickle-down economics, if that's what we're dumping our money into, that is not going to be effective in terms of producing a healthy economy. If we're deficit spending and investing in things like infrastructure, right? Or creating jobs, or, addressing climate change, or, education, or any number of other things that actually uplift the American people economically, then that is going to be healthy in the long run for the economy. The national debt and the deficit, it's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. Okay, it's just a record keeping of how much money have we spent, how much in taxes have we brought in. I mean, your tax dollars that you pay to the federal government, this doesn't apply to state and local governments, but to the federal government, your tax dollars are not actually paying for things. taxes to the federal government are just a way to pull money out of circulation so that you don't have runaway inflation. And taxes can also be used as a way to, sort of morph society, right? To create certain incentives within the economy, to produce a more equitable playing field, right? Or to put pressure on corporations to not destroy the environment or risk people's safety, right? That's what taxes are for. So that's the conversation that we should be having around stuff like the debt and the deficit. But of course, these, Republican ghouls, these corporate media pundits want to use the scary boogeyman of the debt and the deficit to justify forcing old people to work until they die, right? Now, immediately after this interview came out, Trump basically backtracks and he freaks out and he says, I want to adjust my statement there. I didn't really mean I was going to cut it, right? Because it's obviously drastically unpopular in the United States. So, he comes out here, he says, I was actually just talking about, bad management and I didn't really mean we were going to cut them and things like that. So, listen, Trump has previously come out and, he put pressure on Republicans. This was back from 2023. Under no circumstances should Republicans cut Social Security or Medicare. And so it's like, because of things like this, I was kind of surprised by Trump's statement. Because obviously it's bad policy, but it's also bad politics, right? This is not the kind of slip up that I would expect Trump to have in an election year, right? He's a fucking idiot, but he also understands what this host was talking about, that Social Security, Medicare, these are a third rail in American politics, right? You can't touch these programs without it having an absolutely gargantuan political backlash, right? So he fucked up here, regardless of what he thinks he actually meant by it. And I don't, put Trump above, agreeing with Republicans if they had a majority in the House and the Senate of cutting Social Security if he gets reelected. I do think that he would be willing to do that. I don't think he has a principled stance against it, but politically, he's previously recognized that this is not something he wants to talk about. And so I'm surprised that he came out and made that statement. Pretty big fuck up there. And the Biden administration, obviously trailing Donald Trump in a vast majority of the polls recently for the November election, he immediately capitalized on this. So they put this out same day that this clip came out, and here was Biden's response.
This man has no idea what he's talking about. And over my dead body, we cut Social Security so we can give tax breaks to the super wealthy. It's just outrageous, and everything he's saying is absolutely wrong. This is worth the fight all by itself.
So first,
okay. So first off, again, it's politically smart for them to use this line of attack against Trump. That's a great political move. However, with the age concerns, the mental competency concerns of Joe Biden right now, that a huge chunk of the American people have, you're putting out this video. First off, you look like you're stumbling around, but you kept the video playing on your phone in the background. I don't know if you guys noticed that. Maybe go rewind it and listen to it again. You can hear the Trump shot there, the Trump video, still playing in the background as he delivers his message. He didn't know how to pause it on the phone while he was responding to it. Amazing. Okay, now maybe this is actually relatable to seniors who are on Social Security. Maybe this is a plus, and maybe this was intentional. I don't know. Old people, sometimes they have issues with technology, and I guess that could be relatable to some people, right? Now, it's good that Joe Biden's coming out and he's strongly standing against this. However, this is a pretty big market shift from who Joe Biden has been throughout his entire career. I mean, this was an article back from 2020. Ryan Grimm points out here, Joe Biden has advocated for cutting Social Security for 40 years, basically for the vast majority of his career when he was in the Senate and beyond that. He's been trying to cut deals to get Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid cut. So again, it's a good turnaround if he genuinely means that he would block any sort of deal to cut Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. That's a good step in the right direction. Maybe he has changed substantively on this issue, right? But this is the history of Joe Biden. I mean, you can basically, if you look throughout his entire career, you'll find him advocating for some of the worst policies in modern American history, right? But again, to his credit, he's using this as a political bludgeon against Donald Trump right there for his slip up. Now, I want to get to old Benny Boy here, who again is basically trying to argue that everybody should just work until they drop dead on the production floor. So let's go ahead and watch this clip here.
And let's be real about this. It's insane that we haven't raised the retirement age in the United States. It's totally crazy. Joe Biden, if that were the case, Joe Biden should not be running for president. Hey, Joe Biden is 81 years old. The retirement age in the United States at which you start to receive Social Security and you are eligible for Medicare is 65. Joe Biden has technically been eligible for Social Security and Medicare for 16 years, and he wants to continue in office until he is 86, which is 19 years past when he would be eligible for retirement. No one in the United States should be retiring at 65 years old. Frankly, I think retirement itself is a stupid idea unless you have some sort of health problem. Everybody that I know who is elderly, who has retired, is dead within 5 years. And if you talk to people who are elderly and they lose their purpose in life by losing their job and they stop working, things go to hell in a handbasket real quick. But put all of that aside, just on a fiscal level and on a logical level. When Franklin Delano Roosevelt established 65 as the retirement age, the average life expectancy in the United States was 63 years old.
Okay, I don't know how you could possibly make it any clearer. Now, I guess to clarify what I was saying earlier, he's not actually saying that I guess people should work until they literally drop dead. He's saying, because he just brought up that the average age of death at the time that this policy was implemented was around like 63. So I guess he's saying with the retirement age being 65, that made sense because it was within a 2-year window. So you work your entire life, you work for 63 years, and then you get 2 years of retirement and you die, in Ben Shapiro's world. Right now, I guess that the life expectancy is up. It's whatever, I don't know, somewhere around 75, 80. So now you get to work for 75, 80 years, and then you get 1 year or so of retirement, and then you die. That's his dream scenario that he's describing here, right? Now, on the Biden age point, fair point, sure. I think Biden's too old. Trump is also too old. He's only a couple years younger than Biden. They've both shown massive signs of cognitive decline. I don't think either of them should be president, okay? But the idea that, first of all, you're going to claim that everybody you know who is retired at 65 is dead by 70? I mean, I know people in my life who retired around that age. You know, my grandparents, they retired roughly around that age. And, you know, both of them had issues later in life, but they got old and, you know, ended up dying around their 80s, right? So, I don't know, maybe just the people around Ben Shapiro, maybe it's like the aura that he gives off that causes people to die sooner than they otherwise would. But I mean, he even pointed out here that the you know, average age of death in this country has gone up, right? It's now at around, I don't know, like 75 or so. So if people are dying within 5 years after retiring at 65, all the people he knows have died within 5 years, so they're dying on average of 70 years. So I guess the point I'm trying to make is that being around Ben Shapiro, being in his presence, probably reduces your lifespan by, I guess, an average of like 5 to 10 years. Is that what we're saying here? But I mean, the underlying argument is very clear. Ben Shapiro, many other Republicans as well, they do not think that you deserve retirement. They think you should work your entire life and enjoy it, I guess. Now, I mean, people who retire, first off, they don't just go and like lie in bed all day. I mean, like my grandpa, for example, retired from his main job. He ended up going and working as like a tennis coach, right? Teaching kids how to play tennis, whatever. You can do other things. You can have other hobbies, other interests that keep you active and engaged with the world. People can do that, okay? You don't have to just like go and lay in a bed until you die. I don't know what world he's envisioning for retirees. The idea is that you work a huge chunk of your life, you build up savings, you pay into programs like Social Security, and then you get Medicare, and you're able to live somewhat of a comfortable life and relax and enjoy your golden years, right? That's the idea of retirement. Not in Ben Shapiro's world, though. Okay. I mean, Jesus Christ, man. Now, in terms of the popularity of this, right, obviously wildly unpopular. They say here from the AP, few Americans would be okay with some ways politicians have suggested to shore up the programs. 79% say that they oppose reducing the size of Social Security benefits, and 67% are against raising monthly premiums for Medicare. They also point out that 65 million older and disabled people access the government-sponsored health insurance through Medicare and rely on monthly payments from Social Security. 65 million Americans. So when you come out and talk about raising monthly premiums for Medicare, when you come out and talk about slashing Social Security benefits, you're talking about 65 million people. And older people who are getting these benefits, who make up a huge chunk of this, tend to be people who are more inclined to vote as well. So, again, on a substantive level, they're wrong. But on a political level, it's a fucking nightmare for them. I don't know why any Republican would even be openly talking about this issue, right? 79% say that they oppose cuts to Social Security. Now, they also point out a majority, 58%, support the idea of increasing taxes on household making over $400,000 a year to pay for Medicare. And so, I mean, listen, this was a Bernie bill that was put forward, I think, a couple of years ago at this point. And it's very simple, guys. When Republicans come out and they claim that Social Security is going to go bankrupt, there's going to be no money for it in a couple of years, and then the whole program's going to collapse. So we have to do these cuts because there's no other option on the table. Okay, when they say that, they're fucking lying. They're just straight up liars, okay? This plan by Bernie Sanders makes it very simple. The Social Security Expansion Act, expansion, so not just maintaining it, expanding it, would keep the Social Security Trust Fund solvent, meaning paid for 75 years by applying Social Security payroll tax on all income, including capital gains and dividends, for people making more than $250,000 a year. So right now there's a cap. Okay, so I don't make $250,000 a year. I'm sure that basically everybody in my audience doesn't make $250,000 a year. So you guys are paying, the percentage of your income that you do to programs like Social Security, right? But if you were making over $250,000, then anything above that amount, you no longer have to pay that percentage to Social Security. So it's basically just a loophole to allow wealthier people who are, making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to not have to pay a proportionate, fair amount into the program. And so if you get rid of that cap and just have them pay out on the amount above $250,000, it's solvent. You're done. That's the issue solved right there. And as he points out here, it's not as if this would be a massive tax increase on, half the country. 93.7%, almost 94% of Americans wouldn't see their taxes go up by 1 penny. Okay? So, that's the solution. This is why, it is so frustrating hearing these arguments from many Republicans and also many Democrats as well. Oh, we have to work out some sort of a deal or the program's going to collapse. No, it's not. You guys just don't want to raise taxes on people who are millionaires like yourselves and your friends. That's it. It's that simple. Okay? Get rid of the cap on $250,000. People who are making more than that, they'll have to pay a little bit more into the program. But guess what? 94% of the American people, not a single penny increase in your taxes. And you can completely address any sort of issues with the solvency of the Social Security program. So, that's the simple solution here, guys. So that's the substantive angle on it. Again, to recap, the political angle of this is disastrous for Republicans. I don't know what sort of mindset Trump was in. Maybe he forgot that he was supposed to be against cuts to Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. Maybe he just blacked out during that interview. I don't know why he came out and said that, but he said it. And maybe that was an indication of some of his true underlying beliefs, right? Because politically, he knows that it's advantageous to come out against those cuts, but substantively, if it was presented to him and it made it to his desk, would he sign that bill? I think he probably would. And so, this is another one of those factors people should take into consideration, right? And so, I guess good for Biden, even though he was showing his age there in that response video to some extent. Good for him for capitalizing on this. I don't know how much of an impact it's going to make. I would be cutting ads immediately and starting to run them. Trump is going to destroy Social Security. But yeah, we'll have to see. This is definitely an interesting sort of update here as we get closer and closer to the November election.